I locked eyes with her across the marble counter and said the words that ended our marriage. Sign it. This house is ours. She smiled like she had already won. I slid the folder shut with 2 fingers and answered without raising my voice. No, it is mine. And you just signed your name onto a prison sentence. The teller froze. The branch manager stopped mid-sentence. My wife laughed once, sharp and ugly, the same laugh she used every time she called me a paycheck in camouflage. Then the security guard stepped closer, and the manager dialed a number that was not the loan department. If you have ever trusted family with your money and watched them spend your future like it was spare change, hit like right now and stay with me. Because 48 hours earlier, I still believed love meant coming home. 48 hours earlier, I stepped off a bus in North Carolina with a duffel bag on one shoulder and 6 months of sand still stuck in the seams of my boots. Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. That is who I was when I left. That is who I still was when I came back. The house should have been waiting. White siding, blue shutters, a mailbox I painted myself the week before deployment. I bought that house with combat pay, re-enlistment bonuses, and every dollar I did not send home to keep her lights on. I bought it before the wedding. My name alone sat on the deed. I told her that the day we got engaged. She kissed my cheek and said she understood. She did not understand. The driveway was empty when the cab dropped me off. No welcome sign, no flag, just a lockbox hanging off my front door like a dog tag on the wrong body. I stood there for a full minute, counting my own breathing the way they taught us on the rifle range. In, out, steady. Then I pulled out my phone and called her. She picked up on the 4th ring with music in the background and a drink in her voice. "Baby, you were early." I stared at the lockbox. Early? I've been gone 184 days. She laughed again, soft this time, practiced. "Come to my sister's place. We'll talk about the house." We will talk about the house. I did not go to her sister's place. I went to the bank. The branch on Main Street knew my face. I had walked those tile floors every month for 4 years, depositing allotments, paying the mortgage early, building a savings account I never touched except for emergencies. The assistant manager, a woman named Denise with gray at her temples and a Marine Corps sticker on her water bottle, looked up when I came through the door in civilian clothes and still moved like I was in formation. "Sergeant, welcome home." Then her face changed. "You need to sit down." I sat. Denise did not waste time. 2 weeks ago, your wife came in with a power of attorney. She wanted to list the house. She wanted access to the equity line. She wanted the savings account transferred into a joint product. I felt my jaw lock. I never signed a power of attorney for her. Denise nodded once, slow. That is what the system flagged. The signature on the POA did not match the signature card we have on file from your original mortgage. Not even close. We froze the request pending verification. She got angry. She said you were unreachable. She said you gave verbal permission on a satellite call. She said if we did not process it, she would sue. I did not speak. Denise slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a copy of the document. My name, forged. A notary stamp I did not recognize. A date from 3 months into my deployment when I was on a ship in the middle of water so wide you forget coastlines exist. There was no satellite call. There was no verbal permission. There was only a signature that looked like someone had traced my handwriting off an old Christmas card. I did not argue. I locked the folder shut so tight my knuckles went white. I did not cry. Denise lowered her voice. There's more. When we froze the home equity request, we ran a full audit on every account tied to your Social Security number. Your joint checking, the one you opened for household bills, has been bleeding for months. Cash withdrawals, wire transfers, payment apps, none of them matched the budget you set up before you left. And, Sergeant, the money did not stay in her spending accounts. It moved. Moved where? She turned the monitor so I could see it. A secondary savings account, opened 6 weeks after I deployed, in her maiden name only, fed by automated transfers from the joint account every Friday like clockwork. $47,000. sitting there, quiet, waiting. Gone from my side of the ledger, present on hers. I asked one question. Did she try to sell the house through a realtor already? Denise nodded. Listing went live 9 days ago. We called the title company this morning when we saw your return travel notice hit the allotment system. The sale is not final, but she has a buyer. Closing was scheduled for Friday. Friday, 2 days from now. I thanked Denise. I took copies of everything. Statement after statement, transfer after transfer, the forged POA, the listing agreement with my forged initials at the bottom. I put them in the same hard folder I used for deployment orders. Then I walked out into the parking lot and sat in my truck with both hands on the wheel at 10 and 2, like the vehicle might try to leave without me. I did not call her. I drove past the house one more time. Someone had stuck a bright yellow open house sign in the yard I mowed on my knees the spring before I left. The grass was long. The shutters needed paint. The life I built between deployments was being priced by strangers who didn't know my name. That night, I stayed in a motel off the highway. I laid the documents on the bed in clean rows the way we lay out gear before a mission. Deed, mortgage history, allotment records, bank statements, forged POA, listing contract, wire confirmations into her secret account, text messages I pulled from cloud backup, the ones where she told me the fridge broke and she needed $2,000, the ones where she said her brother lost his job and needed rent, the ones where she cried about her mother's medical bills. I sent every dollar. From a ship, from a tent, from a base where the Wi-Fi died every time the wind shifted. I sent it because that's what you do when you love someone. You cover the gap. Except the fridge never broke. Her brother never lost his job. Her mother was on a cruise in the Caribbean the week of the so-called surgery. I know that now. The statements do not lie. Credit card charges in Miami, resort bookings, designer storefronts, a down payment on a leased SUV registered in her sister's name. All of it funded by the man she introduced at cookouts as just a soldier who lets his savings account go empty while playing hero for strangers. She said that, at Thanksgiving, in front of her entire family. Just a soldier, not a real breadwinner. Good for a story, bad with money. She laughed and refilled her wine, and nobody corrected her. I paid for that Thanksgiving turkey. I paid the wine. I paid the electric bill on her mother's house that whole winter. I paid her sister's car insurance for 11 months so the woman could keep driving to a job she quit 2 weeks after I covered her gap. I paid quietly. I paid without posting it. I paid because my father raised me to believe that providing was not a performance. It was a duty.
Duty has a balance sheet. Hers was empty. Mine was not. The next morning at 0600, I called a JAG contact from my unit, a captain who owed me a favor from a paperwork nightmare in Okinawa. I sent him scans of everything. He called back in 40 minutes. "Sergeant," he said, "this is criminal, forgery, attempted fraud against a financial institution, possible wire fraud if those transfers crossed state lines. Do not confront her alone. Do not sign anything. Go back to the bank. Ask them to invite her in under a neutral pretense. Let the institution and law enforcement carry the weight." I did not want theater. I wanted my house. I wanted the truth on paper where no one could rewrite it. At 0900, I walked back into the branch. Denise was already waiting. I told her the plan. She did not flinch. She had seen spouses drain accounts before. She had never seen one forge a POA on a deployed Marine and list his house while he was still on active orders. She called my wife from the branch phone and used her professional voice. "Ma'am, we need you to come in to finalize the equity paperwork and correct a signature mismatch so Friday's closing does not collapse." My wife agreed in under 10 seconds. "Of course, I will be there at 11. 11. I had 2 hours. I used them. I printed the full audit. I organized the transfers by date. I highlighted every message where she asked for emergency money that never went to an emergency. I placed a single sheet on top of the stack. A summary of every bill I had paid for her family in the last 3 years. Mother's mortgage supplements, sister's insurance, brother's phone, her credit cards, her student loan interest when she forgot 2 cycles in a row. Total, $112,000, not including the house, not including the deployment allowances she spent like souvenir cash. $112,000, and she called me bad with money. At 10:45, I stood near the sidewall of the waiting area in a plain jacket over a clean shirt, no uniform, no rank on display, just a man with a folder. Denise worked the counter like any other Thursday. The branch manager, a heavy-set man named Curtis, who had shaken my hand the day I opened the mortgage, stayed in his glass office with the door cracked. A police officer in plain clothes sat in the far chair reading a magazine that never turned pages. Denise made a call after I left the night before. The bank took forged instruments seriously. So did the local precinct when the victim was an active-duty Marine. At 11:03, she walked in. Full makeup, new handbag, the leased SUV keys spinning on her finger like a trophy. She wore the necklace I bought her after my second deployment, the one I paid for in 3 careful installments because I wanted the chain to mean something. She did not see me at first. She went straight to Denise with a smile bright enough to sell anything. "I brought my ID. Let us finish this. I have a closing to protect." Denise smiled back, polite and flat. "Of course. Step over to the desk. We have a few verifications." They sat. Curtis came out. The plainclothes officer turned a page he was not reading. I walked over and took the chair beside my wife without asking permission. She turned. The smile cracked and rebuilt itself in half a second. "Baby, what are you doing here? I was going to surprise you after the paperwork." I set the folder on the desk. No. Her eyes flicked to Denise, to Curtis, back to me. "Do not make a scene. We are securing our future. The house is too big for us. The market is perfect. We take the equity, we downsize, we finally breathe." I opened the folder to the forged POA. "Explain this signature." She did not look at it. "You signed that before you left. You were stressed. You do not remember." "I never signed a power of attorney for you. Not before this deployment, not before the last one, not ever." Her voice rose half a step. "So now I'm a liar. Typical. You disappear for half a year playing hero, and I keep the lights on, and suddenly I'm the criminal because I tried to make a smart financial move for this family?" Curtis cleared his throat. "Ma'am, the signature on this document does not match the bank's signature card. A handwriting review was escalated yesterday. The notary number on this stamp traces to a stamp reported missing from a shipping store in Raleigh 4 months ago. This power of attorney is not valid." The color left her ears first. I turned the next page, the secret account. $47,000, her maiden name, fed by my allotment. She laughed that ugly laugh again. "That's my money. I saved it. I pinched every penny while you were gone." Denise tapped the screen. "The deposits match automated transfers from the joint household account funded exclusively by Sergeant's direct deposit. There are no external deposits from employment in your name. There is no pinch. There is a pipeline." My wife stood up so fast the chair hit the wall. "This is insane. I'm her wife. What's his is ours. That's the law." "No," I said, quiet, flat. "Community property does not cover fraud, and North Carolina is not a community property state. The house was purchased before the marriage. My name alone is on the deed. Your name is on a forged instrument and a hidden account built from money you begged for with stories that never happened." She looked at the plainclothes officer like she finally understood the furniture had changed. "Who is he?" Curtis answered, "That's Detective Harlan. He's here because presenting a forged power of attorney to a federally insured bank is a crime. Attempting to close a real estate transaction on the back of that forgery is a crime. Draining marital funds with deception while a service member is deployed will be of great interest to the prosecutor and I suspect to the military as well." She spun on me. You set me up. You absolute joke of a man. You can't even handle a checking account without a babysitter, and now you want to play prosecutor? You know what
My family says about you. They say I married down. They say I carry you. They say without you, you would still be sleeping in a barracks with nothing to your name. I let the words land. I had carried heavier. Then I took out the summary sheet. $112,000. Itemized. Dates, payees, confirmation numbers, your mother's mortgage, your sister's car, your brother's phone, your cards, your interest, your emergencies that were never emergencies. I paid them. Every one. From deployment zones, from training exercises, from nights where I ate cold rations and still hit send on a transfer because your text said someone you loved was drowning. Nobody was drowning. You were shopping. She slapped the paper off the desk. The pages spread across the tile like a deck of cards in a bad movie. Denise did not move. Curtis did not move. Detective Harlan stood up. My wife pointed a shaking finger at my face. You think you are so righteous. You think a uniform makes you holy. You are a paycheck, Sergeant. That is all you have ever been, a useful idiot with direct deposit. I stood, slow. I picked up every page from the floor. I stacked them. I aligned the edges. I set them back on the desk at right angles to the keyboard. Then I looked at her the way I look at a problem that has already been solved on paper. I am done being useful to you. Denise slid a final document forward, a full freeze acknowledgement. Every joint account locked, the secret account flagged and held pending investigation, the home equity file closed, the title company notified, the listing canceled, the buyer refunded at the seller's fraud contingency. My house was mine again on paper before lunch. My wife lunged for the pen like signing something. Anything could rewrite the morning. Denise moved the pen. Detective Harlan stepped in. Ma'am, keep your hands where I can see them. We are going to talk downtown about the power of attorney and the transfers. You can call an attorney from there. She screamed then, not words at first, just sound. Then words aimed at me like thrown plates. I hate you. I wish you had never come back. I wish the ship had taken you. You ruined my life. No, I said, you forged mine. They cuffed her at the counter, not roughly, professionally. The click of the restraints was small and final. Customers at other desks stared without pretending not to. A man in a contractor's shirt muttered something that sounded like damn. My wife sobbed toward Denise, toward Curtis, toward anyone who might still buy the victim story. Nobody bought it. The statements were still on the desk. Numbers do not cry. Numbers do not perform. Detective Harlan read her the basics. She would be processed. She would be charged. Forgery, fraud. The district attorney would decide the full count. Because the bank was federally insured and the wires had crossed systems, there would be more than a county conversation waiting for her. She looked at me one last time as they turned her toward the door. Please, baby, please, tell them this is a misunderstanding. Tell them about the stress. Tell them I love you. I did not answer. I saluted the empty air where our marriage used to stand. Not for her, for the version of me that kept paying. For the version that mistook silence for loyalty. Then I dropped my hand and let the door close behind the detective and the woman who tried to sell my home with a stolen name. Curtis exhaled hard. Sergeant, I am sorry you came home to this. Denise packed the copies into a clean envelope and pressed it into my hands. You will want these for counsel and for the court, and if her family comes calling, you will want them then too. I knew they would come calling. They came that evening. Her mother, her sister, her brother. 3 cars in the motel parking lot like a convoy of borrowed outrage. They knocked hard enough to shake the chain. I opened because hiding is not the job. Her mother started first, voice high and shaking. How dare you have her arrested, after everything our family did for you, after we welcomed you, after we made you one of us? I held the doorway. I did not let them in.
Your daughter forged a power of attorney and tried to sell my house while I was deployed. She hid $47,000 of my pay in an account under her maiden name. She lied about medical bills and broken appliances and job losses to extract more. The bank caught it. The police responded. I did not invent the law. I enforced the boundary. Her sister shoved to the front. You think you are better than us because you wear a costume to work. She kept your life together. You would have nothing without her. I met her eyes. I paid your car insurance for 11 months. If you want, I can show you the confirmation numbers right now. Would you like to explain those in the same sentence as she kept my life together? Silence. Her brother tried next, softer, the negotiator. Look, man, family handles family. Drop the charges. Take the house. Split the account. We do not need courts in our business. Courts are already in your business, I said, and I am not your man. I am the Marine who funded a household that mocked him for being a paycheck. That arrangement is over, permanently. If any of you contact me again to demand money, silence, or a rewritten story, my attorney will document it as witness intimidation and attach it to the case file. Am I clear? Her mother whispered something vile under her breath about soldiers and trash and women who settle. I closed the door. I fastened the chain. I stood in the middle of the motel room until the engines left the lot one by one. Gone. The next morning at the bank, I signed the freeze confirmations. I removed her from every authorization. I opened a new individual account and pointed my allotment there like a compass resetting to true north. Denise shook my hand with both of hers. My son is a lance corporal, she said quietly. If anyone ever did this to him, I would want a sergeant like you sitting in that chair. I thanked her. I meant it. People like Denise are the reason institutions still occasionally deserve trust. By Monday, the title company had formally canceled the sale. The realtor sent a stiff email about wasted time. I did not apologize. Wasted time is cheaper than a stolen house. My JAG contact connected me with a civilian attorney who handled military family fraud cases. She reviewed the file and exhaled through her teeth. This is clean, Sergeant. Ugly, but clean. The paper trail is a gift. Most deployed clients never get statements this organized. You did the work.
I did the work because the work is what remains when love fails inspection. 2 weeks later, my wife was formally charged. Forgery of a power of attorney, financial transaction card fraud related to the transfers, attempted felony obtaining property by false pretenses on the house. Bail was set. Her family scraped it together from the same network of people who once called me a useful idiot. She posted. She moved in with her sister. She was ordered to stay away from the property, the bank branch, and me. A protective condition. Simple. Enforceable. She still tried to call from blocked numbers. I did not answer. I logged every attempt and forwarded the log to counsel. Pattern. Pressure. Evidence. The house needed work. I spent my post-deployment leave repairing what neglect had loosened. I mowed the long grass. I repainted the shutters the same blue as before. I took the realtor lockbox off the door and dropped it in the metal trash can at the end of the driveway with a sound like a spent casing. I slept in my own bed the first night after the locks were changed and stared at the ceiling fan until the blades blurred. Freedom does not always feel like victory. Sometimes it feels like a quiet room and a folder of statements on the nightstand. Her attorney tried a sympathy angle in early motions, stress of separation, miscommunication, a wife managing alone. My attorney answered with dates, amounts, resort charges, and the missing notary stamp. Sympathy thinned fast under arithmetic. The prosecutor did not blink. A forged instrument used against a deployed service member lands heavy in front of any judge who has ever seen a ribbon bar. I was not in the courtroom the day she took the plea. I was on base running a training block for junior Marines who still thought home was a guaranteed soft place. My attorney texted the result during a water break. Guilty plea on the forgery and the false pretenses count. Fraud count folded in. Sentence pending final report. Restitution ordered for the recoverable funds. The secret account already seized and routed back through the bank's hold process.
No prison carnival, no dramatic collapse in slow motion, just consequences, filed and stamped. Signed. I read the message twice, then I put the phone in my pocket and finished the training block. The junior Marines did not need my marriage on their minds. They needed their drills clean, so I gave them clean drills. That is the job. Restitution did not make me whole in the way movies promise. Some dollars were already burned on things that cannot be returned. The leased SUV, the resort nights, the handbags, the interest of time itself. But the house stood. The deed stood. The forged future she tried to write over my name was void, and the family that mocked the paycheck learned that the paycheck had been the only load-bearing wall in their house of stories. I cut every automatic payment related to them the same afternoon the plea hit my phone. Mother's supplemental mortgage aid, sister's residual auto pays, brother's phone, all of it, terminated. I sent one final email through counsel, short and cold. Effective immediately, all voluntary financial support from my accounts to your household ends. Do not reply. Do not appear at the property. Direct all communication to the listed attorney. Then I blocked the personal numbers. Not out of rage, out of completed checklist. Frozen. People online like to ask why I did not see it earlier. I did see pieces, the vague answers, the missing receipts, the way her family laughed a little too hard when money jokes aimed at me. I filed those pieces under marriage requires trust. That filing system failed. Trust is not a strategy. Trust is a privilege you extend after verification, not before. The Corps taught me to inspect what I expect. I stopped inspecting at my own front door because I wanted rest. Wanting rest is human. Skipping inspection is how you come home to a lockbox on your life. If you are deployed right now, or about to be, or loving someone who is, hear me. Power of attorney is not a romance gesture. It is a weapon. If you hand it to the wrong person, they don't need your permission to erase you. They only need a stamp and an audience willing to believe a sad story. Put alerts on every account. Freeze your credit before you ship out if your situation even smells unstable. Tell your bank the dates of your deployment. Make Denise more common than rare. And if someone calls you just a paycheck, believe them. They have told you exactly how they value you. Adjust your exposure accordingly. I do not hate my ex-wife. Hate is a luxury that eats carry space I need for other gear. I pity the version of her that thought a signature contest with a Marine who keeps records was a winnable fight. I pity her family for building a dinner table on someone else's allotment and calling it tradition. Pity does not restore access. Pity does not reopen the joint account. Pity is just the quiet I carry instead of rage. The house is quieter now. I come back from base and the grass is the length I left it. No surprise charges, no emergency texts, no lockbox. On weekends, I sit on the porch with a coffee and the folder I no longer need to carry everywhere. I keep it anyway, not as a wound, as a manual. Proof that paper beats performance. Proof that discipline outlasts charm. Proof that the man they called bad with money was the only one watching the balance. Sometimes neighbors ask if I am lonely. I tell them I am accurate. Loneliness is a feeling. Accuracy is a standard. I'll take the standard. If this story hit a nerve, if someone in your life has ever reached into your accounts while calling you lucky to have them, let me know in the comments. Type "I understand" if you have ever paid the bills and still been introduced as the one who can't handle money. Hit the like button so the next person who needs this warning actually sees it. Subscribe if you want more stories where the paper trail comes home with rank on its shoulder and refuses to salute a lie. I'm a Marine sergeant. I came home from deployment and found my wife selling my house with a fake power of attorney. I did not shout her down in the street. I did not burn the marriage in a social media thread. I walked into a bank, laid the truth on a desk, and let the institution and the law do what fists cannot do cleanly. She was charged. She pled. She pays restitution. Her access is gone. My name is the only name on the deed again. There was no apology, not a single dollar returned by choice, only by court order. That's enough. Loyalty has a limit.
When someone uses your sense of duty as a debit card, you don't negotiate with the theft. You document it, you freeze it, you end it, and you walk back into your own house with your head level, your record straight, and your future no longer co-signed by people who mistook your silence for weakness. The paper trail was fully documented, and it ticked all the way down to 0 on her side of the ledger. Semper Fi means always faithful. It does not mean always available to be robbed. I chose faithful to the truth. She chose the forgery. Only one of those choices keeps a roof that cannot be lifted out from under you while you sleep in a rack a world away. I sleep under my roof now, alone, clear, solvent, and finally, for the first time since I said I do, the accounts match the life I am actually living. If you are still with me, thank you for sitting through the long way home. Drop a comment for the service members who need the courage to check their own statements tonight. Share this with someone who trusts too easy and verifies too late. And remember, the real flex is not the uniform. The real flex is the folder you can set on a bank desk without your voice shaking. Dismissed.